Hi, it's me, Andres. And this is the Triumph Street Triple RS 765 for 2020. That's the name. A motorcycle for 2020, very similar to the one I rode in 2017. Very similar to the one from 2016, 15, 14, 13, all the way back to 2007 when we first saw the Triumph Street Triple. If something is good, you should only improve it, not change it. And this is an example of why the Street Triple has been such a successful naked bike all these years. I remember, interestingly, back in 2007 when the first streets appeared, the small three-cylinder Triumphs, everyone got on them, and it was a shock. It was a shock and disbelief because these three-cylinder engines, since these motorcycles traditionally had three cylinders in line, was a combination of an inline and a V engine, and everything people needed. A naked bike with a decently strong low end, a powerful mid-range, but also that top end. Because we know that if an engine is a twin, especially in naked bikes, it usually has that low end, the mid-range, but the top end falls flat. On the other hand, four-cylinder engines are nice, pleasant, and smooth to ride, but if you don't keep them in the right rev range, they just don't pull, they don't have the power to get you moving. And Triumph simply did something straightforward. They've always done that. They took one cylinder out of the four-cylinder engine concept, leaving three cylinders in a row, thanks to the fact that these cylinders are relatively larger because the displacement was 675 back then, and today it's about 765. This means that even though the displacement is similar, let's say, to the competition, these pistons have to be a bit larger or have a longer stroke, and as a result, the motorcycle performs better in the low and mid-range RPMs. And when everyone went crazy over Triumph, it was like, oh, super, 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 we're riding these Triumphs. And then the competition responded doing, for example, what Triumph did, producing three-cylinder engines. Take Yamaha with the MT series, advertising it as the dark side of Japan. And at that moment, everyone jumped on Yamaha and said, oh my God, now that's something. Because it had a bigger engine and an insane amount of power. The thing is, Yamaha is cool, it's terrifying, but we don't necessarily need that from a motorcycle. Compare the MT-09 and this Triumph, because it's important to show exactly what I mean. The Triumph was always a bit calmer, a bit more linear when it came to power delivery. At first, twist of the throttle, it seemed less powerful, but ultimately, for example, on the track, it turned out to be faster. Why? Well, that's because the Triumph has always had a fantastic, brilliant chassis right from the start, based on that frame. That frame has actually changed very little over the years. I suspect it's just some minor tweaks. And this frame, combined with increasingly better suspension that was installed in subsequent editions, along with an upgraded swing arm, makes this motorcycle handle better and better, and even better still on the road. Ultimately, as of today, it has been handling so well for the past 3 years that, in my opinion, it's a brilliant machine for use on racetracks during track days. What do we have now? 3 years ago, let me go back to that, because it was a major change in the Triumph Street Triple RS. And somewhere out there is our test on Schwatt Motocicli. There's also onboard footage from the Catalonia circuit. That's when I realized that Triumph's naked bike can behave like a sports machine. It doesn't have that aerodynamics, it was tough on the straights, but in the corners, the exits, the braking, everything was just poetry. Brilliant. And the electronics were impressive too. And here everything has been smooth over these 3 years. I was even surprised that they presented this model in 2020, because theoretically, what for? That one is very good. It already had the largest 765 displacement. In the meantime, Triumph started supplying engines to Moto2, to the World Championship, and soon they're getting into racing, with part of that engine already being used. So why change it? But as I've told you in many previous videos, Triumph is striving to be premium, to pack everything to the limit, to make their motorcycles so refined that no one can find fault with any element. And you can see it in all the switches. In the finish of this machine, because I always say that right now Triumph does it best when it comes to details. In my opinion, this time they went a bit overboard with the gauges, especially the tachometer, which is kind of three-dimensional and, at least on the track, unreadable for me. I couldn't find any option to change this tachometer, but oh well. Honestly, when I'm riding on the track, I rarely look at the tachometer anyway, because I prefer to watch where I'm going and just listen to the engine. I can feel when it's pulling, and that's when I shift gears. But sometimes I do get a bit carried away. That doesn't change the fact that this motorcycle is brilliantly made. And I'll point this out right away, because I'm looking here nowhere else. Well, maybe on some Panigale, no, not Panigalistan, it's embarrassing, but I honestly can't recall another motorcycle right now. Maybe that's because it doesn't exist anywhere. We have an adjustment for the diameter of the piston in the brake master cylinder. Here, you can turn this little dial. You can set it to 19, 20, or 21, and this doesn't change the distance of the lever, but rather the lever's ratio, which means you feel the brake differently. It can feel meatier or stiffer. It's all about personal preference. I prefer brakes that feel meaty and soft, easy to modulate, probably a habit from Supermoto. And listen, this just goes to show that on a motorcycle that costs so much, is it? I don't know, I don't remember. Somewhere around 40 or 50,000 zlotys. We have such flavors. The clutch lever is also adjustable. Well, just a shiny tit. Pirelli Supercorsa SP tires. Well, light rims. Well, everything. A handful of dry facts. It has increased significantly, but that is good because it meets Euro 5 standards, and it is good that it has not decreased. So, do we still have 123 horsepower? 123? I think it's 127. I'll write it somewhere here. We have a lot of power in this motorcycle, and the torque has increased to up to 79 Newton meters. And what's important is that the biggest increases on the curve, on the graph, are in the mid-range of the revs. Weight? I don't know, not much, really not much. I think it's ready to ride at around 200 kilograms, maybe even less. You can lynch me for being ignorant, but trust me, I've already learned that data on paper doesn't tell the whole story. I prefer to get on the motorcycle and feel how it rides, and I can always add the data somewhere in the article so you can check it yourself. What matters is that it handles lightly, and after all, no one is going to carry it around under their arm. But here you go, the weight is somewhere here, we'll include it. I've completely lost my train of thought, but maybe I'll move on to riding this motorcycle on the track and to the engine's actual usability. I remember when those Daytona 675S came out, and suddenly everyone rushed to get them to race in the 600 class because they had that strong mid-range power and the top end was actually quite decent. Sure, nowadays you won't really see those Daytonas much at races, and you might say, well, if it's so great, then why isn't it used in the World Supersport Championship? And that's because it's not really being produced anymore. You might say, but the CBR 600 isn't being produced either, and they still use it. And my response to that is that these are World Championships, and in the World Championships, you have people aspiring to the World Champion title, and they know how to ride within that very narrow rev range where maximum power is produced. And in that case, the 4-cylinder engine really does have an advantage because it can rev higher and generate more of that power. But for us amateurs who ride on various tracks, practice and train, the most important thing is that mid-range of RPMs, where if we make a mistake, but we're just learning, we don't need the motorcycle to be so aggressive. So we use that mid-range of RPMs, and that's exactly it. Overall, it's a brilliant combination of marketing. I think it should be used even more. The fact that this engine is used in Moto2, and those Moto2 bikes are actually faster with these engines than they were with the Honda 600 engines. So how does this motorcycle actually behave? Well, let me tell you, there's definitely some aggression here. The timing has been changed, the valves, and a few other things here and there. Honestly, I'd rather write about it than talk about it because it's a bit boring and I don't want to make a mistake, so you can just read about that in Shriat Motorcycling. What matters is the response. The throttle response is quite aggressive. That was nicely put, quite aggressive. Here's what I mean. This motorcycle can be controlled when you're already riding in second or third gear through corners. The inline engine is nice and manageable then. But if, for example, you're taking hairpins in first gear or enter a turn in first, which often isn't worth it, you can really feel how twitchy it can get under the throttle. It was the same when I was doing stunts, riding on the rear wheel. Even though I set the map to road, you can choose between road and track. It was still twitchy under the throttle. It's way more of a handful than the 675, because what you need to know is that this motorcycle has been loved by stunters for years and still is. That's again because we have linear power delivery. In stunting, it's very important for the motorcycle to deliver power in a linear way. Because when you're doing, technical circles, not big ones, but small drifts and such, you need the engine to be predictable, to run very smoothly, and at the same time you want strong mid-range, and above all, low-end torque, so the bike pulls. That's why the Triumph performed great in stunting, and surprisingly it held up because that's quite a tough test for motorcycles. They don't have it easy there, they're pushed to the limit. And those engines manage to withstand it. So when it comes to stunting, it's a bit harder on the throttle, of course. It's manageable, but it does take some time. When it comes to quick wheelies, it's all good. Bank first gear, second gear, off you go, shifting through the gears. You got a quick shifter, so you just go for it. I didn't have much of a straight stretch, but trust me, it's definitely doable. It's very easy and enjoyable. The easiest way, well, maybe not the easiest, so you don't just go out and immediately try this on your own bikes, on your Triumphs, because the new Triumphs come with wheelie control right away. They're simply brilliant. That's how well balanced this motorcycle is. The Showa front suspension not only gives you great feedback on the track, because this is the kind of suspension you find in many sport bikes. Even in liter bikes, you'll find the Showa BPF big piston fork. It's set up excellently, absorbs bumps nicely. The front end is predictable, but when you do a stoppie and snap those Brembo brakes, the best brakes you can practically get, it just works. You snap the brakes, the bike lifts a bit, and it glides on the front wheel. Brilliant. Very easy and pleasant to fill up. Oh, of course, I forgot about the electronics themselves. I remember I praised Triumph's ABS a lot, and I still can, because in track mode you can lock the rear wheel and even do stoppies, but after doing them multiple times, every now and then the system would kick in. I don't know why. It was like this. I would lift the motorcycle and suddenly the front brakes would let go and it would roll away. It happened maybe 2 times. Let's be honest, it's a minor issue because not many people are going to be doing long stoppies on a stock motorcycle. But I guess it should be mentioned. It's a pity there's no way to completely turn off the ABS, but this isn't an off-road motorcycle, so the regulations don't allow it. That doesn't change the fact that on the track, the ABS never kicked in at any point. It worked brilliantly. And for stunts, well, let's be honest, anyone who wants to do stunts will just pull that fuse out themselves. Same goes for traction control. Overall, this motorcycle has so much traction thanks to that Erlins shock in the back, its geometry and those tires, that in good grip conditions, the traction control is really just there as a safeguard in case you really overdo it. And even when it did intervene, it did so in a way that I couldn't feel any power being cut off on this motorcycle. So that's fantastic. It would come out with these visible rear wheel slides on the asphalt. The engine wasn't being held back at all. So the electronics, just like in the 2017 version, are very, very, very good. But for stunting, you simply have to turn them off. Oh, what's important is that we ride on the rear wheel with traction control on, and at no point did it cut in on me. And that's very important because when riding normally, we don't have to turn off traction control to do a wheelie in track mode, since there's no anti-wheelie in track mode. So not only can we pop a nice wheelie coming out of a corner, but when riding daily, let's call it, we can have traction control on when exiting corners. And if we want to pop a wheelie with a clutch, we just do it and don't have to worry about the computer. So these wheelies, that's just world class. I rode around here a bit and it reminded me of the times when I used to try to pull them off. The further I went, the better it felt. And I kind of got the urge to maybe try doing long wheelies again. But what will my wife say about that? I don't know. Anyway, just riding on the track is pure pleasure. This motorcycle turns so willingly. And that's thanks to the suspension geometry and these tires, which are strictly sport tires. With them, you can go straight to the track. You don't even need to change anything, just go full throttle. It changes direction so eagerly, and the engine revs so easily that a few times the bike actually changed direction, so to speak, too quickly for me. I was riding, wanted to enter a corner, and it turned out that using the same amount of counter-steering force and similar tricks, suddenly I was at the apex much faster than I had planned. When fully leaned over, it can be controlled brilliantly. Nothing new, nothing surprising. A modern motorcycle made with care and a lot of expertise regarding sport machines. A very, very cool motorcycle. And what's also very, very interesting is that this is another super naked, because we have hyper nakeds, which I'm writing about in the current issue of Shuiat Motocicli, like the KTM 1290 Super Duke R. And this is a super naked. It used to be a decent naked, but still a naked. Now it's a super naked, because in my opinion, it's a motorcycle that can effectively compete with sport bikes. On city streets, it'll wipe the floor with any sport bike. It's simply more comfortable for us, and we feel more confident. On the racetrack, if it had fairings and was a Daytona, well, that would be out of this world. But now, really, the only downside is that on the starting straight, we'll lose a bit because of the wind resistance. But in the corner centering them, braking everything is just amazing. Amazing, amazing. The only thing that annoyed me today were the mirrors, which I had to unscrew when riding on the track, because when I tried to slide down, they kept getting in the way. Because of the mirrors, I felt claustrophobic on this motorcycle. Other than that, it's top notch. I'm not exaggerating. I've always liked the street triple. I used to do all sorts of crazy things on them in the streets back when I was a less sensible person. This one really encourages you. It truly does. That's why I suggest you take your Triumphs to the racetrack, where you can do things like that, lean into the corners. Oh, that's important. I didn't mention the gearbox, the downshifts, and the slipper clutch, because you no longer need to use the rear brake. You don't need to use the clutch halfway when entering corners during aggressive downshifting. Just drop the gear, brake, toss the bike a bit into the turn, and it starts to slide in a really cool way. No drama at all. Full control, just awesome. Super, 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 super. I really liked it. I hope you liked it too, Kuba. I hope you liked it too, Lukasz. I hope I would now list all male and female names and say that I hope you liked it. If so, I invite you to visit the website Schwat Motocicli PL. There's a new feature there that might interest you, so subscribe and do all those things. I hate saying this. You know what to do, but if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments and we'll talk more about motorcycles. Take care.